and welcome to another episode of Blockchain Wars. I'm your host, Morgan Rockwell. And today we're going to talk about war with Turkey and China and how that will affect Bitcoin. First, I'm going to give you the state of the network. Right now, we are at 17,169,388 Bitcoins in existence. Block 533551. The blockchain is about 183 gigabytes in size today. And today we've had a 5% increase, about $393. Last week we had a 12% increase. In the last 30 days we've had a 35% increase. So Bitcoin has gained $2,000 in the last 30 days in value in the US dollar markets. So right now we're at 8,236, right? 256 different markets. So right now we are looking at 9,218 nodes operating the Bitcoin network, 8,705 Bitcoin Core nodes, the backbone of the Bitcoin network. So it's still a healthy amount of nodes. We always want to see around 10,000 nodes operating. I mean, we'd love to see 100,000 nodes, but it's not really in the psychology to run that many nodes yet, but that will change soon. Right now, we are still looking at the same 11 countries that have designated Bitcoin as illegal. So we still don't see the United States on there, which is a good thing. And right now, we are seeing Google's search volume for Bitcoin spike once again, which usually has a trend with the Bitcoin price. So that's always important to watch. When people want to search on Google for Bitcoin, usually they're trying to figure out how to buy it. So today, in the news, we're going to talk about the battlefront of Bitcoin, and a very important event has happened in regards to one of the first pioneers of Bitcoin, Ross Ulrich. If you know the case about the Silk Road creator being charged life in prison for basically being manipulated by federal agents into stealing his laptop, abandoning it at the library, having his open laptop taken from him. They stole his coins that he was managing for the Silk Road users, and in the process of trying to pin a murder for hire on him that they basically made up, those agents stole that Bitcoin and tried to run away out of the country. Those agents were then arrested, charged, and put in jail. Now, Ross Ulrich is in jail, just getting his access back to Twitter, which is a miracle that he can now communicate with the outside world. I believe that's through third parties. But what has happened on my birthday on July 20th, great present. Robert K. Hur, United States Attorney from the Maryland District, filed a motion on July 20th, 2018 to dismiss the 2013 three-count indictment against Ross Ulrich, which includes murder-for-hire allegations. Mr. Ulrich, 34, was prosecuted under a separate indictment out of the New York District as Dread Pirate Roberts, principal operator of underground online marketplace Silk Road. Many legal analysts concluded that the looming Maryland indictment prejudiced law enforcement in the least, advocating aggressive sentencing in Mr. Ulbricht's case. He is serving multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. So we know this absolute bullshit lie was made by the federal agents to make him look like a scary drug dealer, just as the man that created this amazing website that allowed everyone to sell anything they wanted, whether it was drugs or paintings or movie tickets or paperwork or IDs, guns, and everything you could imagine was selling on this website. But the tool of the website allowing people to sell whatever they want and use Bitcoin and have a free, clean, open, identity-less marketplace while still having a rating system to gauge on good products over bad products was basically an innovation upon itself. And that is something that I believe Ross was picked on for because of the technology itself. So it's great news that this has now been dismissed. It's the week of dismissals. My federal case that I'm involved with has officially and publicly filed for dismissal. So you can read that on the public docket now. And there aren't many more Bitcoin cases that include people who fight. Now, Ross tried to fight. I believe his lawyer didn't do a good job in that process and was almost tricked into his defense in the way he was done. It was bad, and it needed to be done in a better manner. And now it seems that justice may be served, and he may actually be able to appeal his case after this dismissal and once again try to take it to a higher court. Now, I know the Supreme Court was going to potentially look at his case, but that was denied. And now that this has happened with a dismissal, that might be possible. It may not. So that's an important thing to pay attention to, because we all want to see Mr. Ulrich out in the free world again so he can drink coffee and tea with us and sell more books again and use Bitcoin in his own freedom. That's what we want to see. So let's pray and give hope that Ross is now in a better position to fight, because we need people like that in the Bitcoin space. We need people to sacrifice and fight and put their ideals out there, even people willing to get put in shackles and go into courtrooms. So in the news, the price of Bitcoin has skyrocketed, as they say. We've seen Bitcoin drop $5,000 in a day and up $2,000 in a day. So seeing it move up $2,000 in 30 days is a different definition of skyrocketing. But what we're seeing now is the battlefront. The nation bodies of China, Russia, Turkey, United States, Iran, North and South Korea now basing their financial decisions of debasement and currency printing on Bitcoin's existence and Bitcoin's access to those nations. So one of these articles that I will read from Clem Chambers at Forbes, which is titled Trade War Will Launch Bitcoin as the New Gold. You know, if you read the news, you see that President Trump, POTUS, is acting on his deal-making skills and his arbitrary deal-making attacks to motivate people, especially national leaders, to move the way he wants them to move. And there's this discussion of trade wars. So blockchain wars and trade wars have a lot to do with each other. So one of these very important things that is now happening is nations that print their paper currency debase their currency. They make more of their currency. The United States has done this for many years as quantitative easing, and in the past has printed money out of nowhere without anyone knowing. Now that we have an electronic system keeping track of the national debt, which is over $21 trillion, debasement is not something you can easily do without the public noticing. So in China, debasement is part of national policy. It happens regularly. And what has happened now is the rich, the holders of renminbi, the Chinese dollar called the yuan, have put their wealth into Bitcoin to bypass capital controls and move their wealth out of the Chinese mainland. It's very easy to now take a bridge freeway over to Hong Kong and do these Western-like trades out to other countries without China having capital controls upon your wealth. So if you were a rich person and you were in Shanghai or Shenzhen, you would basically take a Mercedes-Benz drive out to Hong Kong or a little plane ride, and you would take your Bitcoin on your phone, and once you're in servers in Hong Kong, you would send your Bitcoin to some offshore country, whether it's Luxembourg or Switzerland or Brazil or the United States here in Nevada, one of the most friendly tax haven environments for Bitcoin. So we're seeing wealth go into Bitcoin out of nowhere, and that is potentially one of the precursors. You see a spike in Bitcoin's price is actually a forefront of national currency being debased in the next couple weeks. So the smart people with the wealth are basically giving up on gold and moving into Bitcoin, giving up on their cash, whether it's Chinese yuan or US dollars, and moving into Bitcoin. So that affects the battlefield. And at the bottom of this article, it's interesting, it says, it's sadly all down to the POTUS. Now, if this one thing is for certain, the road ahead for the trade war is not going to be a smooth one. Now, battlefield warfare, killing people, and money have never been a smooth thing. It's the dirtiest thing humans do on Earth, and money always affects the battlefield. So now Bitcoin is de facto becoming the battlefield currency. It is easier to move, easier to access, easier to account for in multiple national currencies at once. So it's going to be something that the militaries and the generals and the people that run the weapons of the world are going to start flooding into. So I want to bring up an old article from March from The Intercept, which is the NSA worked to, quote, track down, unquote, Bitcoin users, Snowden documents reveal. Now, this is very important because it actually has to do with our first story about Ross Ulrich. Ross told the world that there was no way the FBI could have found the Silk Road servers, which was using Tor, a technology used to bypass and hide networks created by the United States military, used by the Navy at first. This technology hides the IP addresses in a location. It has a lot to do with the infrastructure that SIPRNet and DARPANET and the original ARPANET of the internet use. And this is something that people have forgotten about over the years. And even with the Edward Snowden documents coming out years ago in a movie about it, most people have forgot about the information that Snowden released. One of the things he expressed was X-Keyscore, the Google of the world that lets you search every single wire on the planet and all data is accessible. So there is you could say an application program the NSA ran connected to that called Oakstar. And Oakstar was used by the NSA to track Bitcoin transactions, Bitcoin users, Bitcoin addresses, and connect them to anyone's IP address, MAC number, telephone number, or geotags. Specifically, the NSA targeted Bitcoin through Monkey Rocket, a sub-program of Oakstar, which trapped network equipment to gather data from Middle East, Europe, South America, and Asia, according to classified descriptions. As of spring 2013, Monkey Rocket was the sole source of SIGDEV for the Bitcoin targets. Now, SIGDEV is Signals Intelligence Development. This means grabbing signals, pulling information and intelligence out of it, and developing it into a product or a package that you can feed to a politician like the president and explain this crap to them in a clear way. So the SIGDEV that was pulled out of these applications, Monkey Rocket and Oakstar, were used specifically to hunt down Bitcoin users. This is a violation of our Fourth Amendment if you're an American citizen and these tools were used on you. Now, this is what Ross Ulrich said, that his Fourth Amendment was violated, and the FBI called the NSA on the phone and said, hey, can you help us find this guy? And now that, if that was proven in court, would be one of the most historically disgusting violations of the U.S. Constitution that's happened in the modern wire internet era. So if that has happened and it can be proven now, we're going to see effects from WikiLeaks, who leaks these documents, which uses Bitcoin. We're going to see more documents or intelligence analysis from someone like Edward Snowden, who uses Bitcoin. We're going to see more information from k.im, who has friends that have given him information about the United States government, especially in regards to things like Seth Rich and our election. And all of these important people, from Assange to even me, who've all interacted with our federal U.S. government, are privy to a little bit more information than most people. And what it looks like from my perspective is that the United States' Constitution has officially been removed from existence in regards to the internet, wires, cell phones, and anything that has to do with an IP address, a MAC number, or a machine with a computer chip inside it. And that probably has to do that the Constitution doesn't really define cyberspace as territory, doesn't really define cyberspace or a computer chip as a state or a location. And the abstractness of that is probably been abused in the utmost ways to let the United States federal apparatus of law enforcement abuse the United States citizens. And these cases all revolve now around Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the de facto tool that anyone who finds themselves oppressed by a government, whether it's the United States, the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, the Turkish, the North Koreans, anyone who is pissed off with Venezuela, Brazil, or any of the nations that form their little groups of buddies and frat clubs, everyone goes to Bitcoin to find their peace, their sovereignty, and their access to money. So if you've ever been kicked out of a bank, you're going to use Bitcoin. If you've ever been told by law enforcement you can't sell your body, you can't sell a plant, you can't sell a weapon, you're going to use Bitcoin. And now the world of laws and weapons are going to revolve around Bitcoin's price, its access, its transactions, and that even goes into the details of Bitcoin affecting the transaction count, Lightning Network, topical layers like Omni and Tether, things like Counterparty and the coin I've created, Bankcoin. These things that make Bitcoin more usable are going to start flooding into the national bodies, the military bodies, and corporations that don't see benefit in that initially are going to die off. And it's going to be pure capitalism to see, companies like Google start using the blockchain, whether it's Ethereum or Bitcoin, they will survive. Companies like Amazon that haven't affected themselves and are not using Bitcoin and not embracing the blockchain publicly, but they have their own private cryptocurrency, the president could initially charge them for using the post office and make them go bankrupt. So it all depends on the battlefield, how these companies survive, but Bitcoin in the background will always survive. So seeing the companies that use Bitcoin or the blockchain is probably your best bet if you're a stock trader. If you're going to invest in America or global corporations, it's best to find the ones that are using Bitcoin or the blockchain and pay attention, because those will probably be the only ones that survive a war. A World War IV scenario will be no different World War I, II, or III, where in World War I we see Jeep and we see Remington and we see companies in the United States that made weapons and uniforms, and we see things like Ford, and these companies survived because they were used in World War I. And in World War II, we see new companies like Boeing and Lockheed and Northrop Grumman, and we see things like IBM used by Hitler and the United States to basically categorize the Jewish people, the gypsies, African Americans, and deserters, all on an IBM computer. And the Enigma machine, the code-breaking machine. And we had to go back to Cherokee and Choctaw to speak in their native language just to hide from these computers that were encrypting and decrypting communications. Those were all based on companies like IBM and initially Intel and things like that. And then once World War III, which I believe has been going on since almost the early 90s up until maybe recently, we can say companies like Microsoft and Google and Facebook and companies like even Tesla and SpaceX and other companies are now being used for these kind of current wars that most people, especially in America, are distracted by television or YouTube or Cartoon Network and don't really pay attention to the battlefield. But these companies are making profits off the battlefield. So they're all using Bitcoin now as a battlefield tool, whether it's to pay people off, to unlock doors, to spy on transactions, to account for things, to interact with Internet of Things, machines and hardware, to do data sharing in a database that can't be erased or tampered with. There's many uses, including voting, which the blockchain could be used for. And now we are going into what I call World War Bitcoin, which is basically World War IV. And now we're going to see voting being demonized in the media. So one of the important things we see is that this week, which I think actually happened on the same day that Ross got his dismissal, we saw Rosenstein, not the favorite person of mine in the United States, the Deputy Attorney General, who's really a scumbag, came out and tried to indict through Mueller 11 Russian spies and said they were infiltrating the United States voting system during the 2016 election. But the really important thing that was said in this crapshoot, unprovable indictment where Russian military and spies will never show up on U.S. soil in court was that Bitcoin was thrown into the indictment as a tool to use to buy servers that were used to hack into our election system, used to fish for information, and they literally blamed the servers purchased by Bitcoin for stealing John Podesta's emails, which John Podesta himself almost admitted that he left his phone in a taxi and it was taken by someone. And WikiLeaks has proven that the data that was taken from that phone did not come from any Russian body. Blaming these things on this so-called Grucifer, which this indictment says is now a Russian person, has never been proved. And people like k.im, who admitted that he had information that it was Seth Rich that gave these documents to WikiLeaks, was denied by Mueller and didn't have the opportunity to give that information to our government because they have a vendetta against him as well. So one of the things I see happening now is Bitcoin is being demonized in the warfare level of federal court. My case personally has to do with selling Bitcoin for cash, which more has to do with the excuse of looking for terrorist funds, drug funds, or funding enemies and foreign bodies. So making sure someone doesn't bring Bitcoin across the San Diego-Tijuana border from drug cartels is basically the point of that case. Making sure you don't walk into an airport with your Bitcoin with $1 million of Bitcoin and fly to China is one of the reasons I believe my case happened. And these kind of things are Homeland Security who arrested me. It's their operation to protect the homeland. But seeing the FBI, the Department of Justice, seeing the special counsel that is literally trying to pin Russian collusion on our president is a whole new level of Bitcoin demonization. Literally not saying a phone was the excuse, a computer was the excuse, electricity, radio waves, a sidewalk that they walked down, but saying Bitcoin was the excuse is, in my opinion, a huge crapshoot, but an obvious identifier that the federal law enforcement all the way up to the DOJ wants to use Bitcoin in the battlefield, but they want to be the only ones that can use it in the battlefield, which is obvious. We don't want other people using our stealth technology, which fucking Mueller gave away. We don't want people using our ICBMs, which the Clintons gave away. We don't want uranium being given to Russia so they could make nukes, which now could nuke everywhere on Earth, which Hillary gave away. There are a lot of technologies that keep the United States safe, and Bitcoin is obviously one of them now. But Bitcoin is not a United States technology, just like stealth and ICBMs and tanks are not a U.S. technology either. But we want to have the best, we want to have the strongest, and we don't want anyone else to have them. So you can't legalize away Bitcoin. You can make a better Bitcoin, which is all the ICO and the clones of Bitcoin from crap Litecoin and crap Ethereum and crap Ripple. They are not better technologies in any way, and trying to make a better tank is easier than making a better Bitcoin. So the only way you can make an enemy not use this great technology is you make even your own citizenry afraid of it, demonize it, and then hide it in the basement in the bunker and make sure only your soldiers use it. That's where I see the United States going with Bitcoin right now, is they want to make sure no one uses it. To quote Representative Emanuel Cleaver, "I've been warning the potential dangers of Bitcoin being used by nefarious actors. Now we know Russia used cryptocurrency to fund their meddling campaign in 2016. The crypto industry needs to step their game up." Now, our game is the most stepped up game in the universe right now, and what I would respond to Representative Emanuel Cleaver is, you idiots in Congress need to step up your game. People like me presented blockchain voting systems, blockchain lock and key systems for military access, for clandestine data sharing, the SIPRNet and blockchain of the military, the decentralized intelligence agencies, all the way to Intellipedia using the blockchain. All of these things have been presented to the U.S. military, which should have seen the United States Congressional Security Councils. And if someone like Representative Emanuel Cleaver is not privy to that knowledge, that's maybe the problem, is that our Congress people who write the laws have no clue what our military is capable of doing. And unfortunately, most of the people out of our 435 representatives and our 50 senators have no clue how a neutron bomb works, has no idea that we have basically telephone poles made out of tungsten floating in space to drop on a country, and they don't understand that Tesla's particle beam weapons are in full force. No one knows that we have those things, even the Congress. So that could be a problem. Our military is not communicating with the Congress fully, and the Congress is pretty much stupid in their age and their perception and their political fatwa against the president and the military. So it's probably not good to give Congress people those kinds of classified military capabilities or information. I could say that our senators are probably bought and owned by China, the Chi-Coms, as Alex Jones says, the Chinese communists, the Iranians, the North Koreans, which now became our great friends. We're buying things from the Iranians, and the Iranians just threatened our president on Twitter. So it becomes a weird situation on who do you trust. We had a presidential candidate delete her emails and basically let foreign countries, whether it was Britain, China, or potentially Russia, let those nations into our classified communique. We can't let that shit happen anymore. We need to let our government step up its game. We need to IQ test all these 80-year-old idiots in Congress that have no fucking clue how Facebook or the internet works. And we definitely need to watch someone, before they become elected, use a Bitcoin wallet, do a Google search, and see if they could set up a Facebook page. Because if they can't do those three things, they probably shouldn't be a U.S. congressperson. So we got to make sure, as the people in this country, that we are the ones that make our government step up its game, because potentially me and you are Congress people and senators. So I suggest you elect people like me into the U.S. Senate. You elect people like Adam Kokesh into the U.S. Senate. You elect people like Edward Snowden, when he's pardoned, into the U.S. Senate. We want to see people who are smart as hell running our government. We want the Mensa people running our government. We don't want 75-year-old idiots working for credit card companies talking shit about Bitcoin in congressional hearings because their biggest campaign contributions come from credit card companies, which will be destroyed by Bitcoin. And those are the cases we just dealt with the recent Congress agriculture meeting of talking about cryptocurrency. So we got to make sure that our government doesn't think it has a nation. We are a nation with a government. We are not a government with a nation, and we got to remember that. So that's a very important thing, because like this article says here from Politico, Mueller's indictment may heighten scrutiny of Bitcoin. No, Bitcoin heightens scrutiny of the United States government. That's the other side to that coin, and that's what we need to market and push as the Bitcoin people. We don't want demonization, so let's just throw some bigger rocks around. And one of these other important news cases, which may or may not have to do with this kind of federal stance on Bitcoin, is this week. Actually, this was not this week. This was a couple weeks ago. Southern California, a Los Angeles woman who called herself Bitcoin Maven will be sentenced for pleading guilty for illegal money transmission. According to law enforcement, the woman made close to $300,000 US annually by selling BTC on a peer-to-peer exchange, local Bitcoins. Sounds very familiar to the situation I'm dealing with. U.S. law enforcement has arrested and convicted another local Bitcoin seller who reportedly made $300K per year selling digital assets. The 50-year-old Teresa Tetley used the alias Bitcoin Maven and sold Bitcoins without registering with the financial authorities. Prosecutors say Tetley's operation fueled a black market financial system in the Central District of California that purposely and deliberately existed outside of the regulated bank industry. Now, to get someone to plead guilty to that was a gross mistake of her legal counsel, and I'll just say that. One of the repercussions of this is now California has one of its first guilty pleas in the Central District. Now, in this same article, k.im talked about this past February, another instance where U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, not anyone else, but ICE specifically, Homeland Security, arrested me, Morgan Raccoons, a.k.a. Morgan Rockwell, in Las Vegas, Nevada, for a BTC transaction, one BTC transaction from November 2016, which is a lie. It was actually from 2015. That month, Raccoons was charged with an unlicensed money transmitter business and money laundering, which I filed for dismissal last Friday. So, to be expressed in this news of demonization of Bitcoin is something I obviously know a little bit about and take very personal. So, I'll just leave it at that. One of the most important things I want to talk about today is the effect China is having on our price, but also the interpersonal relationships between China's partners. And one of the things that's come to my attention, especially with my recent project, Bitcointopia, doing a lot of land sales on Twitter and interacting with people on Twitter, I have found through my analytics of Twitter, thanks Jack, I appreciate having that kind of tool, that 5%, which is the second biggest percent behind English, of the company's followers are Turkish speakers. And basically 4 to 5% of those followers are in Istanbul. Now, how is that significant? It's significant to me because I've personally done work for the United States military. I've sat in rooms and taught law enforcement from different cities, different states, and different U.S. partners from other countries. That is something that I feel is now going to be brought out into the light very soon, because one of these articles I'm reading here is 2 Turkish imams fired for allegedly investing in Bitcoin. 2 Turkish imams have been fired for possessing Bitcoin investments, according to local media. Turkey's religious authorities determined that Bitcoin is not compatible with Islam in November 2017. But up until November 2017, everything was halal. It was all kosher. And the stupidity of this dumb nation run by Erdogan trying to have doctrine over what is kosher or halal, what is doctrine in Islamic law, what is Sharia, points to the fact that Erdogan is not the smartest human on the planet. He has banned Facebook, Twitter, YouTube in his country, but during a military coup where he was almost murdered by his military, he had to use FaceTime from Apple to prove to his populace that he was still alive, to get them to revolt against the coup. So the hypocrisy of this man is very blatant. And to have Turkish people, Turkish military, Turkish news scoping out projects I work on and potentially all of you Bitcoiners' projects is something we need to pay attention to, because Turkey is host of the largest United States military base in Europe, has a large amounts of our nuclear warheads there, and potentially our military tried to get the Turkish military to commit a coup to get Erdogan out. They don't trust him. Our military don't trust him. You as a Bitcoiner should not trust Erdogan. And no matter what your views are on Islam and Islamic law, like Sharia law, or what is the Muslim version of kosher, like the Hebrews have, which is called halal. Halal is the rules that doctrine over money in the Islamic world. Those are not up to one man, because there was the Islamic Bank of Bitcoin since 2010 selling Bitcoin to everyone in Saudi Arabia, Dubai, UAE, and now Saudi Arabia has outlawed Bitcoin and Afghanistan has outlawed Bitcoin, but the UAE is all about jerking off the blockchain. So there's a weird little situation happening there on you can't use it, but we can use it. So we need to not let national bodies try to dictate our freedom away in using Bitcoin. Whether you're in Turkey, walking around in Istanbul, you're going to get black bagged and thrown in a van if you're using Bitcoin now. That's not good. Istanbul is the center of Europe's gateway to Africa. Africa loves the blockchain and Bitcoin. Europe loves Bitcoin and the blockchain. So why the hell is this little gateway city run by one little midget tyrant trying to dictate who gets to use Bitcoin walking through that gateway? So it becomes very strange when Turkish names and Turkish blue check marks on Twitter pop up following a number of Bitcoin people, Bitcoin projects, Bitcoin companies. So one of the examples that I try to give people is all the people that work at Ethereum initially in the first years were all funded and paid for by Goldman Sachs, and Goldman Sachs is heavily working with China and Russia, and Ethereum has gone into the Russian Federation. Vitalik's gone over there 3 seats over from Putin, and basically every kind of copy of Ethereum from EOS and NEO and all these other things have gone to China. But our United States is sitting here trying to throw people in jail for using Bitcoin. So it seems really disadvantaged that we're picking on our own people that use or build these technologies, and we're letting our basic competition out there do whatever the hell they want with the blockchain. Now, is Goldman Sachs an American bank? Did they fund the Ralph Lauren Polo IPO? Did they run Ford's IPO? Did they run Facebook's IPO? Of course. So why the hell are they giving technology to Vladimir Putin, which potentially could be used for voting in elections, when Google just said they're going to use Ethereum? Why is Vitalik 3 seats over from Putin, but we're blaming Russia for using Bitcoin to buy things that were used to hack into our election? You see the full circle of stupidity there? That doesn't make sense. So there's a whole case of counterintelligence and disinformation and psychological warfare going on out there. So you can't be too sure on whose side. Maybe Goldman Sachs is just trying to trick Putin, but probably not. They're a bunch of greedy bastards that hate the American people, and they're probably giving up and going to China and Russia to make their money now. It's no different than the casinos of MGM, the worst company in the United States, or Caesars Group, going to Shanghai and Singapore and going to Macau to give up on the United States gamblers. We have no more entertainment in this city. Gambling is dying. So why did that happen? It's because these companies are getting taken by other national bodies. And the companies that even use Bitcoin are getting taken, or blockchain technology are getting taken. So in this previous article, we step up the blockchain cryptocurrency community. No, the governments and the militaries need to step up right now. We need to put out some patriotic propaganda saying Bitcoin is the greatest thing for the United States. President Trump needs to embrace Bitcoin and say, it's beautiful, I love it, it's gold, I'm going to paint Bitcoin on my buildings. We need to have a full Americana, red, white, and blue embracement of Bitcoin before we get our asses kicked in World War IV. We're going to let people finance all the craziest and most advanced weapons in the world using Ethereum and Ripple, and Bitcoin's going to be used to unlock doors and move money. It's going to be a weird situation if we don't embrace this on the commercial level and we just let the battlefield use it as bullets. Americans protect themselves with bullets. As of August 1st, Cody Wilson's 3D printed gun files are going to everyone in the world, especially Americans. We are preparing for war. We're going to arm everyone. As of yesterday, Hawaii cannot tell you your gun doesn't walk out of your home. The Second Amendment is being protected in full force, and that means people are going to have to defend themselves in the streets soon. And if we go to war with Iran, I guarantee you the thousands of Iranian cells of spies hidden throughout the United States are going to actively start blowing shit up and shooting people. So the United States needs to prepare for these situations, because we have Iran giving weapons to North Korea. Well, we became friends with North Korea. Who the fuck do you think they're giving their money and weapons to now? Probably Israel, probably Turkey, probably acting like the Rothschilds and playing both sides. Because in my notes here, I see that Turkey's going to war with Israel. Turkey's going to war with Greece. Well, Greece and basically Cyprus, had a lot to do with the European Union almost collapsing and Brexit because of their financial losses, their credit ratings. And if we see the same shit happen in Syria and Israel shooting each other, and Turkey and Israel shooting each other, and Greece and Turkey shooting each other, who's at the center of that shooting each other? It's probably Iran and Hezbollah funding everything. The Persian Empire is one of the largest empires in the world. So we need to be capable of knowing history and knowing current affairs and knowing the financial battlefield, because people like me in the Bitcoin space who understand this stuff is a rarity. But Bitcoin people are smart, and they can't be tricked by military people or intelligence community people anymore. Yesterday, DNI, Defense National Director of National Intelligence Clapper, admitted that Obama was the one that set up these Mueller special counsels and set up the FISA warrants to spy on Trump. So if even the Director of National Intelligence is throwing the last president under the bus, that was the one that was there during Snowden's time. That probably affected Snowden leaking, is seeing that man lie to Congress on C-SPAN. We can't even trust our own intelligence community anymore. I've been in rooms with the intelligence community. They don't even trust themselves. They have no fucking clue what's going on anymore. The U.S. military is aged. They have no clue what's going on anymore. They can only learn about things like Bitcoin and in such a capacity. You know, a military guy has a lot easier ability in learning halal and learning Arabic and writing program languages in Arabic as a born American English speaker, but they can't really learn how Bitcoin works. It's just over their head because the training of the dollar is more imprinted than even language. It's the first language. Money was the first language humans ever used. So now Bitcoin is the language of war. It's the language of history. It's the language of trade and commerce. And we need to know what nations, what languages, what militaries are all coming to us as Bitcoin users, whether we're in the United States or in any other nation. You need to know who you're interacting with, because we're in a battlefield. So one of the things we need to keep vigilant, you know, a lot of people bitch and complain about trolls or scams or frauds, and I've been called a scam or a troll or a fraud. You know, none of that stuff really phases me at all. The stuff that really phases me is accidentally communicating with a spy of a foreign nation, accidentally giving code years ago to Goldman Sachs, and they tried to build Ethereum and gave it to Putin, purposely giving technology to my military that they could have used to prevent Russia from fucking our elections over. You know, Trump previously complained about the Electoral College. I built BitCongress and gave it to the Department of Defense. That is a better solution for the Electoral College. He was sitting next to Putin bitching about the Electoral College. They have the tools to replace the Electoral College. It's called the board account, and it's built in to BitCongress. But unfortunately, that shit goes over these 70-year-old senior citizens' heads. They don't get that they have a much better weapon in their hand by using Bitcoin and embracing Bitcoin. And propagandizing Bitcoin is the greatest thing for American jobs. If they don't do that, we're going to basically see chaos. And we're going to see our partners and our enemies go down the blockchain route. Now, if that really happens, we're not going to win the war. We're going to be giving over cyber digital territory to China in the future. You know, and one of these articles that I'll mention again is Forbes author says trade war with China could be good for Bitcoin, like I said before. Now, if that really happens, is the military branch of the U.S. Treasury Department SWIFT, or has it become Bitcoin? As this says, today a very large portion of international trade, whether it involves the United States or not, is completed through a transmission of U.S. dollars. These transmissions are typically completed through a financial system known as SWIFT. Access to SWIFT system is strictly controlled by the United States. This means that, as one author put it, SWIFT is the military branch of the United States Treasury Department. Now, we know SWIFT has been hacked by little 15, 16, 18-year-old hackers. Millions and billions of dollars stolen. We know the LIBOR interest rate was manipulated by a bunch of coked out bankers at HSBC and Goldman Sachs and Barclays and possibly Lehman Brothers all the way back into the 90s. But who the fuck is in control of SWIFT? Obviously, someone that doesn't have their hand on the wheel. So if that's really the military branch of the Treasury Department, maybe the Treasury Department should fucking upgrade to Bitcoin. Maybe the U.S. Federal Trade Commissions, the election commissions, maybe the U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command, all should start upgrading to Bitcoin and the blockchain. They've all talked about it. They've all leaked out little news stories saying that they were going to use it. But where are the results? We're not seeing any results. All we're seeing is fucking indictments going after Bitcoin people. Indictments getting basically dismissed in court. Ross isn't walking on the streets yet. Kim.com hasn't been extradited to the U.S. He's offered deals of information to help for this whole Hillary situation. He's not been given the carrot. We have Assange dying in an embassy right now, and he's not being pardoned. You know, you have sheriff in Arizona for profiling, immigrants coming across the border getting pardoned by Trump. But why aren't these cyber heroes getting pardoned? Those are the things that need to happen immediately. Because, to be honest, if you piss off the cyber warriors, you're not going to have a cyber military in the next war. You got to cater to the cyber military. You got to cater to the cyber warriors. You have to get Davy Crockett in the Alamo. You better bring some morale and some superheroes and some celebrities to rile up the troops. Don't you think Edward Snowden, when some call him a traitor and some call him a hero, would have some good intel to rile up our cyber force? Don't you think Julian Assange, who basically saved the United States from the tyrant of Hillary Clinton, don't you think he should be, teaching our U.S. military some information intelligence doctrine? Don't you think I should be teaching the U.S. military how to use Bitcoin to shoot bombs and unlock doors? I mean, who are you trusting with those tools? A bunch of dumbasses that didn't work on any of it, or the experts in the room who are being demonized in American courtrooms? That's what we need to think about. We need to do what Alex Jones is doing. We need to complain and yell and scream and get red in the face and start talking to people. That's why I do this show. We need to explain what the fuck is really going on out in the real world. We do not want to be caught off guard and blindsided by our idiocy or our lack of attention. Attentiveness is key to survival, and we need to be mindful, as the Buddhists say. Be very mindful of what is happening around you. Situational awareness. Act like a spy. When someone walks through a door, know who's in that room without looking at them. When someone looks at your Bitcoin address, know who's looking at your Bitcoin address. When someone does a trade with you, know who the fuck they are. If you don't have that capability of thinking that far ahead, you're walking into the battlefield with a pea shooter with people with 50 calibers and tanks that will run your ass over. We are in a cyber war, and that unfortunately is not advertised to our population. We are in World War Bitcoin, and if we don't do something about World War Bitcoin and actively do the work to make sure we win as United States citizens and express ourselves to the whole world as the United States way is better than the United Nations way, and the United States way is better for the whole solar system with our Space Force, not the United Nations running Pluto and Mars, that the U.S. dollar is bullshit and we need to make the U.S. financial system built on Bitcoin, that we need to express ourselves into cyberspace and into outer space to have dominion. Otherwise, Americas aren't the greatest anymore. Americas are not looked at as the place to go to. Americans are not looked at as the superior nation on earth. In Roman times, the Colosseum is the death of the culture, and like here in Vegas, building this stupid Raiders stadium is not going to replace the trillion-dollar gambling industry. Bringing Bitcoin to the casinos will make this town alive again. Bringing Bitcoin to the state of Nevada, which Governor Sandoval and Senator Heller have done, that's what makes Nevada a strong state, just like we had gold and silver. Bringing Bitcoin to the federal government and the army is what I have done and what I ask our president right here in the eyes, me to you, Mr. President, real Donald Trump, say you like Bitcoin. Embrace Bitcoin. Admit you have Bitcoin. Make your children talk about Bitcoin. Get the people who love Bitcoin on your side if you want to win another election. Whether you do or not, do you want the United States to be strong? Make sure you make Bitcoin great again. Because Bitcoin was the greatest thing ever created by humans. It's now 10 years old. WikiLeaks was funded by Bitcoin. You wouldn't even been elected if it wasn't for WikiLeaks. Julian Assange saved your ass, Donald Trump. And if he didn't have access to Bitcoin, Hillary would have strung his ass up. So make sure you remember the roots of how you got there as our president and our leader, and make sure everyone around you understands the importance of Bitcoin. That's my message to my president. Make sure Bitcoin is used and protected so the U.S. citizens and the commercial markets can embrace it. Don't throw people like me in jail. Tell your attorney generals and your Department of Justice people and your FBI agents to shut the fuck up and do their jobs and go after foreigners that hate this country, not patriots that try to fix the country. Don't go after people like Julian Assange, the most heralded journalist in our modern times. Don't go after people like k.im, who's made the internet one of the most commercially accessible things using things like Mega. And don't go after people like Snowden, who potentially showed that these dumbass spies were spying on you. Go after the people that helped you get into this position and help the future presidents and the future governments maintain their positions. If not, we're run by the Zog. We don't want to be run by the Zog. We don't want to be run by the Illuminati. We don't want to be run by the Selective Executive Service members. We don't want to be run by these people that no one knows who the hell they are. We don't want to be run by the Bohemians or the Bilderbergers. We want to be run by ourselves. So, my mission is to make sure we win the war. I'm doing my, as I say, Alex Jones, InfoWars, Blockchain Wars statements every time I can like this to make sure people pay attention. If we don't understand how we're going to win and how we keep Americana and make America great again, whether you believe in that saying or not, I want to make the United States great again. I could care less about this American continent. I care about the whole planet and the whole solar system. But I believe in the United States. I believe the United States Constitution. And I believe the United States Constitution has been pissed on and ripped up and buried in the Smithsonian Museum, and no one even looks at it anymore. Take out your Bible, look at the back page. Take out your dictionary, look at the back page. See what's there. It's either Revelations or it's the Constitution. You got to figure out what rules you're living by. And if you want a good ending in your life or in this country's life, we're about to die as a country if we don't do something. We need to do something immediately. We need to pick up our shovels and our pickaxes and our guns and our phones and 3D print ourselves some lower receivers and make some encrypted multi-sig Bitcoin wallets and run a Lightning Network node. We need to embrace the tools that we are given. Pick up your fucking hammers and pick up your phone. Start building and start saving. Because if we don't have the tools when the power grid goes out because of an EMP, you're going to be shot by someone. If you don't have a phone and a battery, you're not going to be able to trade bread and water with someone. We need to be prepared and vigilant. We need to be smart. We can't be afraid of the future. We have to have peace and commerce and productivity every day. But we are going into a very dark pathway as a country, as a planet, as a species. We have people like Elon Musk trying to get us all the fuck out of here to a new planet. We have polluted every inch of this planet. We have to start using what we have to improve it. Now, Bitcoin is the core of all of that. Bitcoin pays for everything. Because of its deflationary value, we have unlimited value over the next 100 years. We don't need 7 people running all the Bitcoin up at the top, whether they're the Winklevi or the U.S. government or the rich bag holders from 2010. We need a distributed system. So Bitcoin in the future is definitely going to get more distributed. Bitcoin is definitely going to get more used, but it takes people like you. It takes things like Zap. It takes things like even the shit company BitPay to improve the use of Bitcoin. If we don't have all of the players in the room come together in this cyber realm, look each other in the faces, whether it's in this city I'm building, Bitcointopia, or over there in Philadelphia, where we're going to maybe have a constitutional convention again. We need to look each other in the eyes and go, what did you make? What do you have? What can you bring to the table? What can you do to improve the United States? What are you doing to improve other people's lives? Because if you're just holding Bitcoin and you're just trading shit coins and you're just shit posting on Twitter and Instagram all day to try to get more money, it'll turn off one day. They'll throw you in a fucking jail cell and maybe your value will disappear. So you need to start thinking as a grown-up. As a man, I know I'm expendable, and That's why I do the work I do. I'm not going to be here forever. So maybe everyone needs to get a little bit of death in their eyes that you're not going to be here forever, and live your life in the best way. The Bitcoin people have so much wealth given to them over the last 10 years that it's probably blinded with hubristic thoughts that you're invincible and that you're going to be the richest people in the room with your Lambos. And maybe these Bitcoins are going to make you more attractive to a female as a dumb nerd in your basement. You need to start thinking a little more out the box if that's your perspective and mindset, because Bitcoin is not just here to make you wealthy. Bitcoin is here as a revolution, to burn the governments to the ground, to make us go into space like Star Trek, to advance our species, to record all human history since 2009 for the next 100 years. If we don't think of Bitcoin as the supercomputer truth machine started by Hal Finney and Szabo and all the people who are included as Satoshi, we are going to forget where we came from, no different than Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and George Washington. And people are going to shit on the white paper just like they shit on the Constitution. We need to embrace our roots, pick up our tools, and fight for what we have created. Whether you believe in the United States or you believe in Bitcoin, you better get out there and fight, because if you're not going to fight, someone's going to fight harder than you ever could imagine, and they will take everything from you. So be vigilant. Don't take no shit from no one. And I'm done.